Today we're going over whether or not it actually makes sense to hold off on selling until the springtime, or if you should just bite the bullet and sell in the fall or winter months. Now, if you're new here, my name's Spencer Lowe. I'm with United Real Estate Louisville. Make sure you click that subscribe button as well as the bell notification so you don't miss next month's market update or any other buyer and seller tip videos just like this. Also, down in the description, I've got my 7 must-do list of things that you should do before you list any house. So if you are thinking about selling, make sure you grab that at the end of the video. With all that being said, let's jump into the video. Now we're going to get into actual numbers and what the market does here in Louisville over the past 2 years. So we're going to look at 2025 as well as 2024 and what the markets did in the springtime versus in the fall and winter months. With that being said, a couple things that you need to know though is, first off, if you are needing to sell, if you're going into foreclosure or bankruptcy or divorce or whatever else, the best time to sell is as soon as possible. The other thing is if you are moving or relocating, it's not necessarily a bad time to sell and go ahead and list your house in the fall and winter months. Okay, it's not necessarily that you're going to make an extra 10-20% on your house if you just hold off until the springtime, like most people tend to think. A lot of people think that it's better to sell and buy in the springtime. It's not necessarily always the case. Just a lot of people like to move in that weather, and we typically do see a slight uptick in our listings, which means that there are more options on the market, but there's also more buyer competition in that market as well. So if you're just looking to sell your house and then buy another house, yes, more houses hit the market in the springtime. As the seller, that means that you've got more houses to compete with, because if you list your house and there's 5 others in your neighborhood that also went up for sale, well, now the buyers have 6 houses they're picking from. In the winter months, typically what we see is we see really serious buyers, right? If you're on a car lot and it's raining and pouring down and you're one of the sales guys and somebody shows up to buy a car, they're probably in the position where they need to buy a car pretty soon because they wrecked their car, their old car, the engine exploded or something crazy happens, right? They need to buy a car pretty much now. They need it yesterday. That's why they're willing to go out and shop in the rain. So if they're willing to go out and shop in the fall and winter months, chances are they're really needing to buy a house. They're either relocating for their job, they're, maybe they're just first-time home buyers and they don't want to compete with all the other buyers in the spring market, so they'd much rather buy now. Whatever the issue is or whatever the reason for moving is, it's really important to realize that, in the winter and fall months, yes, we do see our buyers kind of start to back off a little bit and hold off until the next spring, but with that as well, that also means that we might have fewer showings with more serious buyers. So yes, spring market kind of goes a little bit crazy, and we're going to go over some of the numbers for that, but just keep in mind that in the fall months and the winter months, we do have more serious buyers because they're not necessarily just looking around as, maybe we'll move this spring if the right house pops up. It's typically people that are going, hey, I need to buy a house because I'm relocating for my job. Hey, I need to buy a house because, I'm getting divorced or we're getting married or whatever it is. They're looking to buy a house and they're really serious about wanting to buy a house in that time frame because they're shopping in those colder months. Now, once we hit springtime, everybody kind of hits the market, but and we're going to go over those numbers, but just keep in mind that yes, fall and winter months still aren't bad times to sell. Typically, we do see some serious buyers in those markets, and it's not necessarily that we're going to 10 times our money on our house if we wait until springtime. So with that being said, let's jump into the numbers and actually see what the numbers are looking like for backing all that up. Alright, so I've got my numbers in front of me, and here's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at our days on market for the year 23 to 24. So it's going to be December 23, January 24, and then March and April as well. I'm showing you the full year of this, but I want you to kind of keep in mind, December, January, March, and April, we're all sitting in that same range on our average days on market. Now, when we get into 2024, same numbers as well, but we're, same time frame as well, but we're looking at our absorption rate. And what an absorption rate is basically how many months of inventory do we actually have sitting on the market. With that being said, we did start to see it kind of fall from that November time frame. That's when we saw our most inventory on the market with the least amount of buyers. And then what happened that year was we slowly started to dip until we bottomed out in April, where we had the least amount of houses on the market with the most buyers. And then it started to climb up from April, going May, June, July, August. It all started to kind of climb back up. Now, the other next numbers that we're going to look at is our days on market for 2025. Now, what you're going to notice about this is that it started climbing in October of 2024. It climbed all the way up and peaked out in February, and it started to go back down in March, and it fell down all the way until we hit July, on in August, and then it peaked back up in September. Now, on top of that as well, the absorption rate in 2025 as well peaked out in November, and then it fell December, January, February, March, April, and then it started climbing back up after April. March or May was up a little bit, June was up, July was up, August was up, and then September was about level with August. So keep in mind that, yeah, yes, our absorption rate does dip and kind of goes down, and all that means is that we have a lower supply for the demand. That's essentially that metric. It's months of inventory is that number that you're going to see. So when you see that 1.6 to 2.4, that's our months of inventory. 6 months is considered as an even playing field amongst buyers and sellers. So yeah, our absorption rate does kind of go down in the springtime for 24 and in 25, but our days on market doesn't necessarily change that much. In 25, it did go down. It started to peak in February and then it started to go down. But if we look at November 24 and December 24, in comparison to April, December was actually a little bit lower than April was. And so then November as well is actually about lower than April was. So it's not necessarily that it's better to sell in the springtime. I think this is just kind of a common theme that people tend to say it's better to move in the springtime because you're not moving, in the cold winter months. It's not necessarily that you're going to get more for your house because you sold in the springtime. It's always possible that maybe you wait until the springtime, more buyers come in, we get multiple offers, and then it pushes the price up a little bit. But what I would kind of consider is what's the position that you're in and how does that actually affect you in waiting to the springtime, right? If you're going through a divorce, you're going filing bankruptcy, you're relocating for a job, maybe holding on to it for another 4 or 5 months doesn't necessarily make sense. Now, if you can hold off and you're just kind of wanting to compete with more buyers, yeah, maybe wait until the springtime. The other thing is whenever you go to sell a house and buy a house, so if you are looking to sell your house and then buy a house here in Louisville as well, whenever you sell, you're also buying in that same market. So timing the market doesn't necessarily make sense. You're in a buyer's market, you go to sell your house, you're not necessarily competing when you go to buy a house because it's a buyer's market and there's fewer buyers than there are sellers, or there's more sellers than there are buyers. So you kind of drive the ship there, but keep in mind, you're also selling in a buyer's market. So yeah, you might be able to talk somebody down a little bit on the buy, but they're also going to be able to talk you down on the buy as well. In the seller's market like we're in now, you might pay a little bit more for the house, but you also might be able to get a little bit more for the house as well. So it's, as long as you're moving from Louisville to Louisville, you're going to be in about the same market. And maybe it differs by neighborhood, but it's not necessarily going to differ that much. So if you are interested in getting started, or if you're thinking about selling and you just want to do a free consult where we walk through the house, look at everything, kind of give you some tips and tricks to kind of get the house ready for next spring if you do want to hold off. If you are in a position where you need to sell now, give me a call. I'd love to help you out. But if you are looking to sell next spring and you want to just walk through, talk about the entire process, first off, download my 7 must-dos before you list your house, and then also give me a call or shoot me a text. I'd love to sit down and talk to you, walk through your house, and kind of give you some tips and tricks to get the house ready for the market. And maybe you're holding off until next spring, you want to list in March or April, that's completely fine. And if you want to sell now, that's completely fine as well. I'd love to help you out with it. Once again, my name is Spencer Lowe. I'm with United Real Estate Louisville, and I'll see you in the next one.